Welcome back to Church of the Master United Methodist Safe Sanctuary online training, lesson 3, Children and Youth Specific Guidelines. My name is Bev Pancoast, and I am the Director of Youth Ministries and the staff member who oversees the Safe Sanctuary policy at Church of the Master. Thank you again for taking time to train with us, whether you are a new volunteer or an old volunteer. We appreciate the time that you are giving to our children and youth to do this training, and then that you will give them as a volunteer within our ministry programs. Let's get started. The first thing we want to make sure that our volunteers understand is our participant forms. All children and youth who participate in the ministry programs of the church must have appropriate forms on file. These forms are updated annually. The first one is our family registration form. New for the 2020-2021 school year, our family registration form is now one form for children and youth ministry families. It used to be one for each of those ministry areas, and we combined them to make it hopefully easier for families to fill out forms when we get a bunch of them in the mail at the beginning of the year. The second piece is the individual medical or permission form, and that is one per child. That is the information that pertains to specifically the child. And it also gives us permission, sort of a blanket permission slip for activities that we do throughout the year. When you fill out those forms, the family registration form is going to give us information about what school does the youth go to or the child go to. When is their birthday? What is their shirt size? Because from time to time we have ministry opportunities where we have t-shirts, and if we have that all listed ahead of time, we don't have to send out a bunch of emails asking about that. It's also in those forms that you'll find the spot that you will initial and give us permission to be able to use pictures or videos with your children in them to celebrate ministry events in our sanctuary. With our new online streaming of events, we need to make sure that if a youth is going to be in a worship event, that we have permission to have your child's image on screen. Those types of things. Those are all found in those permissions on the family registration form, and then individual medical and permission forms. We do send those out yearly. If you need a copy of them, you can find them at Church of the Master's website. There is another form that we have that we send out to youth ministry families when we are going to have an overnight event that gives the program staff permission to give youth over-the-counter medications. It lists different types of medications, what they're used for, and the dosage that the youth might need, whether it's an adult dose or a children's dose, what we can or cannot administer to them. And then on the flip side, it has a place for parents to give us the prescription medications that a youth will need on the trip. So we know what they're taking, when they need to take it. And if it's a controlled substance, we keep it in a lockbox just to keep it safe. In Ohio's continually growing opioid crisis, we just want to take that temptation away from anyone, whether it be within our group or outside of our group, to be able to get a hold of medications that could cause more harm than good. The next area that we want to talk about is dismissal from events. We have found over the years that it is inevitable that one child or youth's transportation from the event arrives after all other participants' transportation have arrived. In those circumstances, a child or youth may be in an individual presence of an adult. This circumstance is just unavoidable. The general rule that requires the presence of 2 adults is suspended, and the adult that is left is responsible for exercising his or her best judgment for the student's well-being. Choosing locations that would put you and the child in a public location are preferred. For example, standing in the church parking lot, weather permitting. If the weather is not good, standing inside the entrance closest to the parking lot, the main street exit of the church. It has good lighting, it has windows, people driving by or walking by could see you standing there talking with a child or a youth while we're waiting for their parents to arrive. What we don't want to happen is have a volunteer or a staff member want to finish packing up for the evening excuse me, and take the child or the youth around the building with them, where then when a parent arrives, it's hard for them to figure out where their child is. And it also could be misconstrued if an adult has a child in a place far away from an exit, in a place where it's not as easy to get to. And it could just raise some red flags for people that really shouldn't have any problems if people just follow where is a good place to wait or not wait. This next section is something that no youth pastor ever really wants to have to talk about, and because it's never been an issue in their program. But we do have to be proactive about statements about dating or sexual involvement between our youth and our youth volunteers. No adult youth ministry volunteer is to date a youth or be romantically or sexually involved with a youth. This includes our young adults who participate in summer mission trips with the youth. Although they are considered an adult, they're in college, and sometimes they forget that they are older than some of the students on their work crews. And there is no exception, though. You cannot be an advisor, be there as an adult volunteer, and then date one of the youth from our youth group or from another youth group. Any adult with a prior incident of sexual misconduct may not be a youth worker or serve in any capacity in youth ministry at Church of the Master, United Methodist. There's no exception to this guideline. It is just something we cannot have. Overnight activities. Excuse me. At least 2 adults will supervise overnight activities per the guidelines established for our youth ministry events. If the participants are male and female, then a male and female chaperone must be present. If these conditions cannot be met, then the event should be postponed. And just a reminder, if you go back to a previous lesson when we talked about ratios for a youth event are 2 adults to 20 youth. So once we hit 21 youth, we need to have a 3rd volunteer with us. As long as we have 1 male and 1 female, that is okay. We do not need to have 2 more people in that 21 to 40 student capacity, although extra volunteers are always welcome. When we are away from the church, we need to stay connected to the church. There must be access to a phone, whether it's a landline or cell phone, when groups are away from church property. We also need to have a list of participants and volunteers, either a hard copy or electronic, left in the church office in case of emergencies. If we are out and about traveling and suddenly they hear someone on the news hears about a bad accident somewhere and people knew the church kids were heading that way, there could be a lot of rumors that float by. So by having a connection that a church employee or parent can get a hold of us and find out that everything is okay is important. In this day and age of most everyone carries a cell phone, this might not be as important, but we still think that having a specific number that the church can call if there's questions or needs or information that needs to get to someone is important. Lodging considerations. If an overnight stay occurs in a hotel or a motel, then the youth of the same gender may stay in rooms alone, while Church of the Master adult volunteers will be on call at all times. If it is deemed necessary by the paid church leadership, adults can stay in the room of youth of the same sex if there are at least 2 youth or 2 adults in the room. It is never appropriate for an adult chaperone who is not a family member to share a bed with a youth. Monitoring of hallways will be set up based on specific events and lodging circumstances. No youth are to be permitted in the sleeping quarters of an opposite gender at any time unless the leader in charge has all the youth in one room for a lesson or group meeting. Supervision of sleeping quarters when we are away. Female staff will supervise female youth in their sleeping quarters, and male staff will supervise male youth in their sleeping quarters. And in the event of something like our mission trip, we need to have 2 female and 2 male for each room of female or male students we have. If there are 2 rooms for our youth to sleep in for each gender, that means we have to have 4 female and 4 male volunteer and staff members with us to properly cover the adults to youth ratio of our event. We're going to take a minute to talk about transportation and youth and children's ministry. First, we're going to talk about the to and from meetings. Transportation to and from meetings is not part of the church or youth group activity. Our events begin when our students arrive at church or at the location that we're meeting at. Parents are responsible for providing or arranging for this transportation. Parents are discouraged from asking leaders to transport children. However, if a leader does transport a child at the parent's request, this should be recognized as informal contact, otherwise known as not part of church activities, and the guidelines for informal contact should be followed. We learned about that in our last lesson. Youth drivers can only transport the people that they arrive with at church. If another youth wants to leave with a youth driver, an adult volunteer must hear verbally from both the youth driver and the youth who wants the ride's parents that it is okay for this transport to happen. We are just trying to protect our youth drivers and our youth riders to make sure that parents are comfortable with that those circumstances, and that we need to hear from them verbally, not just my mom said it was okay. Nope, need to hear mom tell me or one of the other youth advisors that yes, indeed, it is okay for Johnny to bring Jimmy home tonight, and that it's okay with Jimmy's mom that Jimmy's getting a ride with Johnny from youth. Transportation is part of events. When children or youth are transported as part of ministry programming, all of these guidelines will apply. All drivers must complete an auto safety certification form and have a BMV background check on file. The auto safety certification form is for our insurance, the church insurance, and the BMV background check just allows us to know that we are putting our children and youth in vehicles that have drivers that are safe. All vehicles must have working cell phones so that communication between vehicles is always available. Someone besides the driver needs to be the communicator for the vehicle if there is not a hands-free phone option in the vehicle. It is never okay for the driver to be talking or texting on the phone while driving. A responsible youth or older elementary student can serve in this role as long as both parties are comfortable with it. Seatbelts and safety seats. The number of riders in a vehicle is dependent on the number of working seatbelts available. It is never okay to have children or youth ride without a working seatbelt or sharing a seatbelt. When transporting for our children's ministry program, car seats and booster seats must be taken into account when planning transportation. Parents are responsible for providing those safety seats and making sure they are correctly installed in the volunteer's vehicle. Children or youth will not be permitted to ride in the front seat of a vehicle until they meet the guidelines of age, height, and weight. And for me in youth ministry, I tend to check with parents before it's okay for a student to ride in the front seat. And our final piece for this lesson is about high adventure activities. Special precautions must be taken on high adventure activities such as rock climbing, hiking, overnight camps, raft trips, and the like. Both physical safety and safety from abuse are at risk in high adventure situations. A high ratio of adult to youth is recommended. Guidelines for high adventure activities should be licensed by the sport's governing body or government authorities to guide groups whenever possible. High adventure camping often raises unique circumstances involving individual privacy, sleeping arrangements, bathroom facilities, and so on. Adult leaders must be vigilant to avoid suspicious or misinterpreted behavior in these circumstances. As we have trips that have these types of events in them, we will make sure that we inform parents of as much of these pieces as we can, working with the agencies that we book trips through, that they can help us navigate what we need to know before we take one of these trips for our students and for our leaders. Thank you for watching this video. Please take a moment and click on the Google form in the link below in the comments to take a short quiz about this lesson. And like I said before, we appreciate you taking time to participate in this training. I hope you have a great day.